Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift back through time, not to the glamorous parts, not the wars or coronations, but to something far more tranquil. Paperwork, ceremonies, meetings that could have been letters, if medieval kings knew how to send one. So, dim the lights? Get comfortable. Maybe grab some tea you'll forget to finish. Because tonight, we're exploring the quietest corners of royal life, the moments when kings and queens weren't ruling empires. They were mostly just bored to tears by their own jobs. Let's start with a truth every historian secretly loves. Most of royal life wasn't exciting. It was endless repetition dressed in gold. Every morning for centuries, monarchs around Europe woke up not to adventure, but to a carefully choreographed routine designed to remind everyone that they were, in fact, royal, and therefore above normal human fun. Take Louis XIV of France, the so-called Sun King, the man who built Versailles, who turned absolute power into an art form. You might imagine him striding through golden halls, issuing commands like some radiant god. In reality, his mornings began with what was called le grand lever, the royal waking up ceremony. And yes, it was exactly what it sounds like, a group of nobles crowding into his bedroom to watch him wake up. First came the high-ranking lords, then a few lesser ones, each allowed to help with some small, deeply unimportant part of the process. One might hand the king his shirt, another got the honor of holding his wig. Someone else might, if truly blessed, be permitted to hand him a shoe. Imagine doing that for 20 years straight, all to prove your loyalty by handling someone else's sock. The entire affair could take an hour, sometimes longer. Louis, of course, didn't do anything himself. Why would he? His job was to exist, perfectly, visibly, and continuously. That was the core duty of a monarch, not action, but presence. You weren't expected to make things happen. You were expected to be there while other people made things happen around you. Let's float over to another royal disaster in slow motion. Philip II of Spain. Now, Philip was a man who took duty very, very seriously. Too seriously. He personally reviewed thousands of documents every day. And by reviewed, I mean obsessively signed, annotated, and sometimes re-signed them just in case the ink didn't dry right. He worked from dawn until past midnight, surrounded by towers of paper. Imagine being the ruler of half the world and spending your life proofreading. By the end, Philip's handwriting had become so cramped and miserable that even his secretaries couldn't read it. The man who governed continents was slowly losing a war to his own bureaucracy. Of course, kings like Philip didn't delegate easily. Trust issues were kind of a royal hobby. When you're raised to believe that everyone is trying to poison you, which, to be fair, they often were, you don't exactly enjoy sharing the workload. So instead of leading armies or exploring the empire, Philip sat at his desk, hour after hour, day after day. His courtiers joked that if Spain ever invaded itself, the king would respond with an official memo. Across the channel, England was doing no better. Royal duty there meant sitting through ceremonies so long and mind-numbingly detailed that even the participants occasionally nodded off. Take George III, the king best known for losing America, though, honestly, that might have been the most exciting part of his reign. His daily life was ruled by strict routine. Breakfast at exactly 8, meetings at 9, signatures by the dozen, endless letters to ministers about topics like grain tariffs, horse breeding, or who was allowed to wear what color coat at court. George was famous for his punctuality and his tendency to overthink every single detail. He once spent 3 days debating whether the royal stables should have 6 or 8 lanterns. Truly, the stuff of legend. By evening, he would take a short walk through Windsor's gardens, sometimes inspecting trees with the intensity of a man checking military fortifications. Then he'd return indoors for dinner, precisely at 7, before retiring early. No wild parties, no drama, just the quiet tyranny of routine. Of course, royal boredom wasn't limited to men. Let's float over to Marie Antoinette, who might have been history's most tragically overscheduled teenager. Before she became the doomed Queen of France, her mornings at Versailles were already an exhausting display of ceremonial absurdity. Each morning, she was dressed in front of dozens of courtiers, who took turns handing her garments depending on their rank. Want to offer the Queen her petticoat? You'd better have the right title for it. Otherwise, step aside. The entire process was less about getting dressed and more about establishing the correct hierarchy of who was allowed to touch which royal sock. And because she was constantly on display, Marie couldn't even yawn without someone bowing. Her diaries from the early years mention how she longed for privacy, just one morning without an audience. So she built a private retreat, the Petit Trianon, where she could pretend to be a normal person. She dressed as a shepherdess, tended fake gardens, and imagined she was living a simpler life. Of course, this attempt at normal living became a scandal, because apparently being too boring could also offend people if you were royal. Let's drift north to Russia, where the royal boredom reached new, icy heights. Nicholas II, the last Tsar, wasn't exactly known for his thrilling leadership. His journals reveal a man trapped in routine, a pattern so fixed it's almost hypnotic. Nearly every entry reads the same. Woke at 9. Breakfasted. Walked with Alex. Read reports. Dinner. Bed. That's it. Every day. For years. The ruler of a vast empire was essentially living on repeat. He loved structure, order, and predictability, everything that life and eventually revolution refused to give him. While the empire unraveled, Nicholas was more concerned about the weather, literally. His diaries mention the temperature more often than politics. You could chart the fall of the Romanovs between comments like, "Very cold today," "Walked with the children," "Alarming reports from Petrograd," "Had tea,"